Ambassador Jin Min-kyung looked out the massive window of Nexus Station and saw dozens of alien ships floating in the dark space around them. Each ship carried representatives from different worlds across the galaxy. They had all come here for one purpose: to sign the most important peace treaty in galactic history. The station was huge, bigger than any human city. Its halls were filled with beings Jin had never seen before. Some walked on 4 legs, others floated in the air. A few were so tall they had to bend down to fit through doorways. Despite their differences, they all seemed excited about today's ceremony. Jin smoothed down her dark blue diplomatic uniform and checked her translation device one more time. As Earth's lead ambassador, she carried a heavy responsibility. The war between the Sekhar Empire and the Velmari Trading Confederation had been going on for 30 years. Billions had died. Entire star systems lay in ruins. Today's treaty promised to end all of that. "Ambassador Jin," called a familiar voice. Dr. Lee Hee-jin approached with a tablet in her hands. The young scientist specialized in alien cultures and had been invaluable during the negotiations. "The ceremony begins in 2 hours. Have you finished reviewing the treaty?" Jin shook her head. "The document is over 3,000 pages long. I've read most of it. But there are sections written in scripts I don't recognize." "That's normal for galactic treaties," Dr. Lee said. "They include ceremonial language from all member species. It's mostly traditional phrases and formal greetings." Before Jin could respond, the air around them shimmered. A tall figure appeared. High Chancellor Vex Tar, of the Galactic Hegemony. His species looked almost human, but his skin had a gray tint and his eyes were completely black. He wore robes, covered in strange symbols that seemed to move and shift. "Ambassador Jin," Vex Tar said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "How wonderful to see you again. I trust you're pleased with the treaty terms?" Jin bowed politely. "The hegemony has done excellent work bringing everyone together, Chancellor. This treaty will save countless lives." "Indeed." Vex Tar nodded. "Your species may be young in galactic terms, but Earth has shown wisdom in supporting this peace. I hope you'll sign without delay. Every moment we wait, more beings die in this senseless war." Dr. Lee stepped forward. "We appreciate the urgency, Chancellor. But surely you understand that Ambassador Jin needs time to review such an important document?" Vex Tar's smile grew wider, but something cold flashed in his black eyes. "Of course. Though I should mention that delays might make other species nervous. Some might wonder if Earth truly supports galactic peace." After the Chancellor left, Jin felt uneasy. Dr. Lee noticed her expression. "What's wrong?" the scientist asked. "Did that sound like a threat to you?" Jin wondered. "Maybe. But he's under pressure too. This treaty took years to negotiate." Jin returned to her quarters and spread the treaty documents across her desk. Most of the text was straightforward. The Sekhar and Velmari would stop fighting. Trade routes would reopen. 18 IP. Refugees could return home. It all seemed reasonable. But something bothered her about those sections in unfamiliar scripts. Jin activated her computer and began running translation programs on the strange text. Most came back as ceremonial language, just as Dr. Lee had said. But one section made her pause. The translation was rough, but it seemed to classify certain populations as protected dependents after the war ended. Jin frowned and ran the translation again. The computer gave her the same result. She called Dr. Lee to her room. When the scientist arrived, Jin showed her the translated text. "What do you think this means?" Jin asked. Dr. Lee studied the screen carefully. "I'm not sure. Protected dependents could mean refugees or war survivors who need assistance. Or it could mean something else," Jin said quietly. They worked through the night, carefully translating every line of the unfamiliar text. As the hours passed, a disturbing picture began to emerge. The protected dependents would be assigned to hegemony worlds for guidance and care. They would work in designated areas and follow hegemony laws. Most troubling, they could not leave their assigned worlds without permission. "This isn't protection," Dr. Lee whispered. "This is slavery." Jin stared at the translations in horror. The Sekhar and Velmarie populations that lose territory in the war settlement. They'll become slaves to the hegemony. But why hide this in ancient script? Because they knew no one would sign if they understood what they were agreeing to. Jin's hands shook as she continued reading. The hidden clauses went further. Any species that opposed the treaty could also be classified as threats to galactic peace and subjected to the same fate. The hegemony would gain legal authority over entire populations while appearing to promote peace. "What are you going to do?" Dr. Lee asked. Jin looked at her friend. "I need to contact Earth immediately." The message to Earth took 6 hours to transmit across the vast distance. Jin spent the time pacing her quarters and reviewing the evidence. When the reply came back, it was brief but clear. "Decision is yours. Earth trusts your judgment." That trust felt heavier than any responsibility Jin had ever carried. She thought about the billions of beings across the galaxy who had no idea what they were about to lose. She thought about Earth's position as a minor power that couldn't afford to make enemies. But she also thought about the fundamental values that made humanity who they were. The belief that freedom was worth any sacrifice. The conviction that right mattered more than might. By morning, Jin had made her choice. She dressed carefully in her formal diplomatic robes and walked to the grand ceremony hall. Representatives from every major species in the galaxy had gathered. The massive chamber buzzed with excitement and hope. High Chancellor Vextar stood at the center podium, the treaty displayed on screens around the room. One by one, he called each ambassador forward to sign. When he called Jin's name, she stood slowly and walked to the podium. The hall fell silent as she approached the document. She picked up the signing stylus and looked out at the hundreds of alien faces watching her. "Ambassador Jin," Vextar said quietly. "The galaxy awaits." Jin set down the stylus without signing. "I cannot agree to this treaty," she said in a clear voice that carried through the hall. The silence in the great hall stretched for what felt like hours. Jin could hear her own heartbeat as hundreds of alien eyes stared at her in shock. High Chancellor Vextar's face had gone completely still, his black eyes fixed on her like a predator watching prey. "I'm sorry," Vextar said finally, his voice carefully controlled. "Did you say you cannot sign?" Jin straightened her shoulders. "That's correct. Earth cannot agree to this treaty. In its current form." The hall erupted in chaos. Delegates began shouting in dozens of different languages. Some stood and waved their arms, others made angry clicking sounds, and a few species Jin had never seen before began flashing bright colors. "Order," Vextar called out, his voice booming over the noise. "Ambassador Jin, perhaps you misunderstood something in the translation. This treaty will end 30 years of war. Surely Earth supports peace?" "Earth absolutely supports peace," Jin said, raising her voice so everyone could hear. "But we cannot support slavery disguised as peace." The word slavery hit the room like a physical blow. The shouting stopped instantly. Even the translator devices seemed to pause as they processed her words. "That's a very serious accusation," Vextar said, his gray skin growing darker. "Perhaps you could explain what you mean?" Jin activated her tablet and projected the hidden text onto the room's main display. These clauses, written in ancient hegemony script, classify defeated populations as protected dependents. They strip away basic freedoms and assign people to work on hegemony worlds without the right to leave. A tall, bird-like delegate from the Sekhar Empire stepped forward. "Those symbols, we cannot read them. Why are they in our treaty?" "They're ceremonial," Vextar said quickly. "Doctor," Lee stood up from the Earth delegation section. "I've spent 3 years studying hegemony historical texts. They're legal terms that define ownership of sentient beings. More delegates began demanding to see translations of the hidden text. A representative from the Velmari Confederation, who looked like a walking tree with silver bark, spoke in a voice like wind through leaves. If these accusations are true, this treaty is not about peace, it's about conquest. Vextar raised his hands for calm. Fellow beings, let's not allow fear and misunderstanding to destroy the hope for peace. Ambassador Jin, your species is new to galactic politics. Perhaps you don't fully understand the complexities involved. I understand perfectly, Jin replied. These clauses would make billions of beings into slaves. Earth will never sign a document that allows that to happen. Then Earth chooses war over peace. Vextar said, his friendly mask finally slipping away. How many will die because of your stubbornness? How many will live as slaves because of your deception? Jin shot back. The Sekhar delegate spread his massive wings. We demand time to study these hidden clauses before any signing takes place. As do we, said the Velmari representative. If Ambassador Jin speaks truth, this treaty is poison disguised as medicine. Other delegates began voicing similar demands. Vextar's carefully planned ceremony was falling apart. His black eyes swept over the crowd, and Jin could see cold anger building behind them. Very well, Vextar announced. We will adjourn for 1 day to address these concerns. But remember, every hour of delay means more death and suffering in the ongoing war. As the hall emptied, Jin found herself surrounded by other delegates asking questions. Some seemed genuinely curious about the hidden clauses, while others appeared suspicious of Earth's motives. A few species that Jin knew were closely allied with the hegemony glared at her with obvious hostility. Back in her quarters, Jin received an urgent message from Captain Park Sang-woo of the Earth Defense Force. His weathered face appeared on her communication screen, and she could see the worry in his eyes. Ambassador, we're getting reports of hegemony fleet movements near human space. 3 battle groups have moved to positions along our borders. They claim it's routine patrol activity. Jin felt a chill run down her spine. How long before they could reach Earth? If they moved at maximum speed, about 4 days. But Jin... Park paused. Earth Command wants you to know something. We're behind you 100%. Admiral Kim Jun-ho personally sent a message to all fleet commanders. If the hegemony wants a fight over this, they'll get one. Earth can't win a war against the hegemony, Jin said quietly. Park smiled grimly. Maybe not. But we'll make them pay for every inch. That's a promise. Maybe not. We'll make them. After ending the call, Jin found Dr. Lee waiting outside her door with an unexpected visitor. It was an alien she had never seen before. Shorter than most species, with pale blue skin and large, sad eyes. He wore simple clothes and looked nervous. Ambassador Jin, Dr. Lee said. This is Kretal. He used to work for the hegemony government. The blue-skinned alien bowed deeply. Ambassador, I heard what you said in the hall today. You spoke truth, but you do not know how dangerous that truth is. Jin invited them both inside. What do you mean? Kretal sat down heavily, as if carrying a great weight. I was a scientist for the hegemony for 40 years. I helped write the legal frameworks they use to control conquered populations. What you found in that treaty? They have used those same methods on dozens of worlds. You're saying this has happened before? Many times. The hegemony offers peace to warring species. But the peace always comes with hidden costs. Entire civilizations have disappeared into their protection programs. They work in mines and factories, build ships and weapons, all while being told they are fortunate to receive hegemony guidance. Dr. Lee leaned forward. Why did you leave? Kretal's large eyes grew even sadder. Because I finally understood what I had helped create. When I tried to speak against it, they declared me mentally unstable and exiled me. I have been hiding in the neutral zones ever since. Do you have proof of what you're telling us? Jin asked. Krital pulled out a small device. Records from 12 different worlds. Population counts before and after, protection. Economic output reports. Medical experiments. All the evidence you need to show the galaxy what the hegemony really does to conquered peoples. Jin stared at the device, knowing it contained information that could change everything. Why are you giving this to me? Because you did something today that no one has done in 40 years. You stood up to them in public. You gave other species hope that someone might finally fight back. That night, Jin couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about Earth's small fleet facing the massive hegemony war machine. She thought about the billions of beings who didn't know they were about to lose their freedom. Most of all, she thought about the choice she had made and whether it was worth the consequences that were coming. By morning, word had spread throughout the station. Earth had rejected the Galactic Peace Treaty. Some delegates praised her courage, while others whispered that humans were warmongers who preferred conflict to compromise. But Jin knew the truth. Earth hadn't chosen war over peace. Earth had chosen freedom over slavery. The real fight was just beginning. The second day of negotiations never came. Instead, Jin woke to alarms blaring throughout Nexus Station. Emergency broadcasts filled every communication channel with the same message. High Chancellor Vextar was calling an immediate assembly of all galactic powers. Jin dressed quickly and hurried to the main assembly hall. The atmosphere had completely changed from the day before. Where there had been hope and celebration, now there was tension and fear. Hegemony security forces stood at every entrance, their weapons clearly visible. Vextar took the podium without his usual diplomatic smile. His gray skin had darkened to almost black, and his eyes seemed to burn with cold fire. Fellow beings of the galaxy, he began. Yesterday, we witnessed something deeply troubling. Earth, a minor power with no understanding of galactic politics, chose to disrupt a peace process that took years to create. Their wild accusations and refusal to sign has already caused renewed fighting between the Sekhar and Velmari forces. Jin felt her heart sink. New fighting meant more death and destruction. But that's not the worst part, Vextar continued. Intelligence reports indicate that Earth has been secretly communicating with radical elements on both sides of the war. They appear to be encouraging continued conflict for their own benefit. That's a lie. Jin stood up from her seat. Earth has done no such thing. Silence, Vextar commanded. You will have your chance to speak. He activated a holographic display that showed what appeared to be intercepted communications. The messages seemed to show Earth offering weapons to both warring factions. Jin stared at the display in shock. The messages were completely fake, but they looked convincing. Vextar had planned this from the beginning. Given Earth's interference in galactic peace, Vextar announced, the hegemony has no choice but to take protective action. As of this moment, all human space is under economic quarantine. Any ship attempting to trade with Earth will be considered hostile. Several delegates began speaking at once. The Sekhar representative spread his wings angrily. You show us messages that could be made by anyone. Where is your proof that these come from Earth? The evidence speaks for itself, Vextar replied smoothly. But if you doubt it, consider this. Earth rejected a peace treaty that would have saved millions of lives. What reason could they have, except to profit from continued war? A delegate from a small trading world raised her voice. What about the hidden clauses Ambassador Jin showed us? We still haven't received proper translations. Those translations were deliberately distorted to cause confusion, Vextar said. Earth's xenobiologist has been feeding them false information to support their agenda. Dr. Lee stood up beside Jin. I have my complete research files. Anyone can verify my translations independently. Research files can be altered, Vextar said dismissively. The hegemony's official linguists have reviewed the same text and found nothing but ceremonial language. Jin realized she was watching a master manipulator at work. Vextar had an answer for everything, a way to twist every fact to support his version of events. But she also noticed something else. Several delegates looked unconvinced. They remembered her words from the day before and weren't willing to simply accept Vextar's explanations. "I demand the right to present Earth's evidence," Jin announced. "You have lost that right through your actions," Vextar replied. "However, the hegemony is merciful. If Earth apologizes publicly and signs the treaty immediately, we will consider lifting the quarantine." Jin looked around the hall at the faces of beings from dozens of worlds. Some showed sympathy. Others showed suspicion. A few looked afraid. They were all waiting to see what she would do. "Earth has nothing to apologize for," Jin said clearly. "We told the truth yesterday, and we stand by that truth today." "Then you choose the consequences," Vextar said coldly. The assembly dissolved in chaos as delegates argued among themselves. Jin made her way back to her quarters through corridors filled with security forces. She had barely closed her door when her communication system activated. Captain Park's face appeared on screen, but he looked different now. He was wearing full combat armor, and she could hear battle stations, alarms, in the background. "Jin, we've got a problem. 3 hegemony battle groups just entered human space without permission. They're demanding that all Earth Defense Force ships stand down and prepare for inspection." "What did Admiral Kim tell them?" Park grinned fiercely. "He told them that human space is sovereign territory, and they can inspect this." Park held up his middle finger. They didn't seem to understand the gesture, but they got the message. "How long do we have?" "They're moving slowly, probably hoping we'll back down. Maybe 6 hours before they reach our outer defense stations." Jin closed her eyes. 6 hours before everything changed forever. "Park, I need you to know something. What I did here was right, but I never wanted it to lead to war." "Jin, listen to me carefully. Every person in Earth Defense Force volunteered for this job. We all swore an oath to protect human freedom and the freedom of our allies. You didn't start this war. You just refused to surrender before it began." After ending the call, Jin found Kretal waiting in her outer chamber. The former hegemony scientist looked terrified. "Ambassador, you must understand what's happening. Vextar has been planning this for months. The treaty was always a trap. If you had signed, Earth would have been bound by galactic law to help enforce the slavery clauses. If you refused, they would use that as an excuse for military action. Then we never had a real choice. You had the most important choice of all," Kretal said quietly. "You chose truth over lies. That choice is already spreading across the galaxy." As if to prove his point, Jin's communication system began receiving messages from delegates who had attended the assembly. The Sekhar representative wanted to meet privately. The Velmari Confederation was demanding independent verification of the treaty translations. Even some smaller powers that usually followed the hegemony's lead were asking questions. Dr. Lee burst into the room carrying her research equipment. "Jin, I've been monitoring communications across the station. Word is spreading about the hidden clauses. Several species are demanding their own linguists review the treaty. Will Vextar allow that? He can't stop it without looking even more suspicious." "But Jin, there's something else. I intercepted a message from Hegemony. Command to their battle groups near Earth. They're not just planning an inspection. They're planning a full invasion." Jin felt the weight of the galaxy settling on her shoulders. Earth was about to face the most powerful military force in known space, all because she had refused to sign a piece of paper. But when she thought about those hidden clauses and what they really meant, she knew she would make the same choice again. Some things were worth fighting for, even when the odds were impossible. She activated her emergency communication link to Earth Command. "This is Ambassador Jin Min Kyung. Tell Admiral Kim that the hegemony is coming with everything they have, but also tell him that we're not alone. The galaxy is starting to wake up to the truth. In the distance, she could see hegemony ships moving into attack formations through the station's massive windows. The war for galactic freedom was about to begin. The first shots of the war came from an unexpected direction. While everyone waited for news from the hegemony attack on Earth, fighting broke out right on Nexus Station. Jin was in her quarters studying intelligence reports when explosions shook the massive structure. Emergency lights began flashing, and automated voices announced that the station was under attack. She looked out her window and saw small ships firing on hegemony security vessels docked at the station. "Dr. Lee," Jin called out. "What's happening?" The scientist ran to the window, her tablet showing sensor readings from across the station. "It's the Velmari traders. They're attacking hegemony ships." Before Jin could respond, her door chimed. She opened it to find Kretal and a tall being she didn't recognize. The stranger looked like the Velmari representative, with silver, bark-like skin and glowing green eyes. "Ambassador Jin," Kretal said urgently. "This is Branch Singer Velthara. She leads the Velmari resistance against the hegemony. We need to evacuate you immediately," Velthara said, her voice like wind through trees. "Hegemony forces are trying to capture all non-aligned delegates." "I can't leave," Jin protested. "I'm Earth's representative." "You are the symbol of resistance now," Velthara replied. "If they capture you, they can claim Earth surrendered. Your safety affects the entire galaxy." As they spoke, Jin could hear weapons fire in the station corridors. The hegemony was fighting to maintain control, while other species were openly rebelling. Her communication system activated with an emergency transmission from Admiral Kim Jun-ho. The old officer's face appeared on screen, and Jin could see the bridge of his flagship behind him. "Jin, we've got good news and bad news. The bad news is that hegemony forces just attacked our research station at Kepler 442. The good news is that they got their teeth kicked in." "How is that possible?" Jin asked. "They outnumbered you 50-1. Admiral Kim smiled grimly. Captain Park had some interesting ideas about defensive tactics. Turns out hegemony ships are built for intimidation, not actual fighting. They've never faced an enemy that shoots back effectively. Dr. Lee leaned toward the screen. "What do you mean?" "The hegemony has been winning through superior numbers and fear for so long that they've forgotten how to adapt to unexpected tactics. Park used the asteroids around the research station like a maze. Their big ships couldn't maneuver, and their commanders didn't know how to respond to guerrilla tactics." Jin felt a spark of hope. "What about losses?" "We lost 3 ships. They lost 37. And Jin, word is spreading fast. The Rigel colonies just declared independence from hegemony protection. The Altair system is in open revolt. Your stand is giving everyone courage to fight back." After the transmission ended, Jin made her decision. "Velthara, I'll come with you, but we're not running away. We're going to find every species that wants to resist and help them coordinate their efforts." The escape from Nexus Station was chaotic but successful. Velthara's ship slipped away during the confusion of multiple battles, carrying Jin, Dr. Lee, and Kretal to safety. Their destination was a hidden base in an asteroid field where the Velmari had been secretly preparing for war. Jin was amazed to find ships from a dozen different species already gathered there. A massive, bear-like creature approached as they disembarked. Jin recognized him as General Torvak of the Ursay Confederation. "So this is the human who started the rebellion," Torvak rumbled in a voice like distant thunder. "You are much smaller than I expected." "I prefer to think of it as starting the liberation," Jin replied. Torvak laughed, a sound that shook the entire hangar. "I like this one. Velthara, your human has spirit." Over the next few hours, Jin learned the true scope of what was happening across the galaxy. The Sekhar Empire had officially withdrawn from all hegemony treaties and was mobilizing their fleets. 3 trading confederations had declared independence. Even some hegemony member worlds were reporting internal uprisings. How many ships can we count on? Jin asked during a strategy meeting with the resistance leaders. Velthara consulted her datapad. Perhaps 2,000 vessels of various sizes, against the hegemony's 10,000. Numbers aren't everything, General Torvak growled. My people learned that fighting humans during the trade war disputes. Humans are crazy enough to ram battleships with cargo haulers if they think it will work. Dr. Lee looked up from her own calculations. The hegemony's biggest advantage is coordination. They've been operating as a single unit for centuries. But that's also a weakness. They can't adapt quickly to unexpected tactics. Kretel nodded agreement. I worked within their military structure for decades. They value order above everything else. When that order breaks down, they become confused and ineffective. Jin studied the star charts showing hegemony territory. What if we don't try to fight them in traditional battles? What if we force them to adapt faster than they can handle? Explain, Velthara requested. Hit multiple targets simultaneously across their entire territory. Force them to divide their attention and resources. Every time they send reinforcements somewhere, we attack somewhere else. General Torvak's eyes lit up with understanding. Chaos, warfare. Very human concept. Very effective against rigid enemies. The plan they developed over the following days was unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. Instead of trying to match the hegemony ship for ship, the resistance would strike like lightning across hundreds of worlds. Small, fast ships would hit supply depots and communication hubs. Larger forces would attack isolated hegemony fleets. Most importantly, resistance cells on hegemony worlds would coordinate simultaneous uprisings. The key is timing, Jin explained to the assembled captains. We need every attack to happen within the same 6-hour window. The hegemony command structure will overload, trying to respond to everything at once. A week later, the coordinated assault began. Jin watched from the command center as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. The hegemony was reeling under attacks they had never imagined possible. But the most important news came from Earth. Captain Park's voice crackled over the long-range communicator. Jin, you're not going to believe this. We just received surrender requests from 3 hegemony battle groups. They're asking for safe passage out of human space. They're retreating. Better than that, they're running. Admiral Kim's tactics have them so confused they don't know how to fight back. But Jin, there's something else. We're receiving messages from hegemony soldiers asking to defect. Whole crews are abandoning their ships to join us. Jin realized that the resistance was winning something more valuable than military victories. They were winning hearts and minds. The idea that the hegemony could be defeated was spreading faster than any fleet could travel. 3 weeks after rejecting the peace treaty, Ambassador Jin Min-kyung stood in the command center of the resistance flagship, watching holographic displays show hegemony forces in full retreat across a dozen star systems. How long before they regroup? She asked General Torvak. At this rate, they may never regroup, the massive general replied. Half their member worlds are in revolt. The other half are asking for negotiated independence. Dr. Lee approached with a datapad. Jin, we're receiving a transmission from High Chancellor Vextar himself. He wants to meet with you personally. Jin smiled. Tell him I'll meet with him. But this time, the meeting will be on our terms. The war that had started with a refused signature was about to end with justice finally served. The meeting with High Chancellor Vextar took place on a neutral trading station in the Sigma Draconis system. Jin arrived with a small diplomatic escort, while Vextar came with what remained of his inner council. The contrast was striking. Where the Chancellor had once commanded the respect of the galaxy, he now looked desperate and defeated. The former ruler of the hegemony was no longer the imposing figure Jin remembered. His gray skin had taken on a sickly pale color, and his black eyes darted nervously around the room. The rebellion had broken something fundamental in his confidence. "Ambassador Jin," Vextar said as they sat across from each other at the negotiating table. "I hope you're satisfied with the chaos you've unleashed across the galaxy." "I'm satisfied that beings across the galaxy are finally free to choose their own destinies," Jin replied calmly. "Free?" Vextar laughed bitterly. "Look at what your freedom has accomplished. Trade routes are destroyed. Governments have collapsed. Millions are dead from the fighting you started." Dr. Lee leaned forward from her seat beside Jin. "The fighting started when you tried to enslave entire populations through deceptive treaties. Earth simply refused to participate in that crime. We brought order to chaos," Vextar insisted. "The galaxy was a collection of warring species before the hegemony united them. Without our guidance, they will return to endless conflict." General Torvak, who had insisted on attending despite the diplomatic nature of the meeting, spoke up in his rumbling voice. "Strange how your order required so many beings to work in chains." Vextar's composure cracked completely. "You don't understand. Species like humans are too young, too naive to grasp the complexities of galactic governance. Someone has to make the difficult decisions, like deciding who deserves freedom and who deserves slavery?" Jin asked quietly. The Chancellor stared at her for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was barely a whisper. "What do you want?" Jin had prepared for this moment carefully. She pulled out a data pad containing the terms that the Resistance Coalition had spent weeks negotiating. "Complete dissolution of the hegemony government," she began. "All former member worlds will choose their own governments through free elections monitored by neutral observers. All beings currently classified as protected dependents will be immediately released and given full citizenship rights on their home worlds, or the worlds of their choice." "Impossible," Vextar said. "The administrative systems alone would take decades to reorganize." "Then it's fortunate we have allies willing to help," Dr. Lee said. "The Velmari Confederation has offered to coordinate refugee resettlement. The Sekhar Empire will provide security during the transition. Even some former hegemony worlds have volunteered assistance." Jin continued reading. "All hegemony military forces will be disbanded. Former hegemony officials will face trial for crimes against sentient beings, with sentences determined by representatives from affected worlds." "You're talking about the complete destruction of galactic civilization," Vextar protested. "We're talking about the birth of real galactic civilization," General Torvak corrected. "One based on cooperation instead of domination." For several hours, they negotiated the details. Vextar fought every point, but his position was hopeless. The hegemony no longer existed in any meaningful way. Most of their fleet had either defected or been destroyed. Their member worlds had declared independence. Even their core systems were demanding new leadership. The final sticking point was Vextar himself. "What about me?" he asked finally. Jin studied the broken leader across from her. 2 months ago, he had commanded the loyalty of thousands of worlds. Today, he was a defeated old being, facing the consequences of his choices. "That's not for Earth to decide," Jin said. "You'll face trial before representatives of all the species harmed by hegemony policies. They will determine your fate. And if they choose execution, then you'll face the same justice you denied to billions of others." Vexatar signed the surrender agreement with shaking hands. As he did, Jin felt no triumph, only sadness for the waste of it all. If the hegemony had truly pursued cooperation instead of domination, the galaxy could have been a paradise instead of a prison. 6 months later, Jin stood on the observation deck of New Geneva Station, humanity's newest diplomatic facility. Through the massive windows, she could see ships from dozens of species coming and going freely. Trade flowed without restrictions. Cultural exchanges were happening on a scale never before imagined. Captain Park joined her at the window, now wearing the uniform of the Galactic Peacekeeping Force, that had replaced the old hegemony military. "Any word on the trials?" he asked. Vex Tar was sentenced to life imprisonment on a rehabilitation world, Jin replied. Most of his council received similar sentences. A few of the lower-level officials were given community service, helping resettle refugees. Jin replied. "Seems fair. What about you?" "I hear the new Galactic Council wants you to serve as their first Secretary General." Jin shook her head. "I turned them down. My job was to expose the truth and help organize the resistance. Building the new government is work for people smarter than me. I doubt that's true, but I understand." Jin smiled, watching a group of young beings from different species working together to repair a damaged trading vessel. "Dr. Lee and I are starting the Institute for Interspecies Understanding. We want to make sure something like the hegemony can never happen again. By teaching people to communicate better? By teaching them to see each other as equals instead of threats or resources." That evening, Jin received a message that surprised her. It was from a young hegemony citizen named Talren, who had been one of the first to join the rebellion. "Ambassador Jin," the message began. "I wanted you to know that my world has chosen its new government. We voted to become a democracy, like Earth. My grandmother was one of the protected dependents you helped free. She asked me to tell you something. She said that courage is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to do right, despite being afraid. She believes that's what you showed the galaxy." Jin read the message twice, then saved it in her personal files. She had received thousands of similar messages over the past months. Each one reminded her why she had made her choice that day on Nexus Station. Dr. Lee found her an hour later, sitting in their new office and staring out at the stars. "Regrets?" the scientist asked. "None," Jin said firmly, "though I sometimes wonder what would have happened if I had signed that treaty." "I think I know," Dr. Lee said, settling into the chair beside her friend. "The galaxy would have slowly died from the inside. Freedom sacrificed for the illusion of peace. Eventually, there would have been nothing left worth saving. And now?" Dr. Lee smiled, gesturing toward the window where ships from the free worlds of the galaxy moved in peaceful harmony. "Now we have a chance to build something beautiful." Jin nodded, watching a small human transport dock beside a massive Sekhar vessel. The crews emerged and began working together, as if they had been allies for centuries instead of months. "You know what the best part is?" Jin said. "What's that?" "We proved that the right choice doesn't depend on the odds of success. Sometimes you have to stand up for what's right, just because it's right." Dr. Lee looked thoughtful. "Think there will be other tests like this?" "Probably. There are always beings who think they know better than everyone else. But now, the galaxy knows something important. It knows that standing together, we're stronger than any force that tries to divide us." As night fell over New Geneva Station, Jin Min-kyung looked out at the stars and felt peace. She had rejected a galactic peace treaty and helped start a war. But in doing so, she had given the galaxy something far more valuable than the absence of conflict. She had given them genuine freedom. Years later, when young diplomats studied galactic history, they would learn about the day a human ambassador looked at a document that would have enslaved billions and simply said, "No." They would learn that sometimes, the most important word in any language is the one that refuses to compromise with evil. And they would remember that the galaxy was not saved by the strongest or the smartest, but by someone who simply refused to do wrong, even when the whole universe seemed to be watching. Ambassador Jin Min-kyung had rejected the Galactic Peace Treaty, and Earth had backed her. The galaxy would never be the same.